Alright, so apparently I completely forgot to actually do an intro, so here that is. Today, this is the second part of the 5th tier of the mysterious / lost locations iceberg, so if you ain't checked out the rest of that, I'm gonna link the playlist below. And other than that, man, make sure that y'all like and subscribe to this shit. You see the bags under my eyes, cause I just woke up. I was up till like 3-4 in the morning last night just making sure I record this thing, so make sure y'all running me up, cause trust me. So anyways, back to me from last night. So alright, so up first is the Bridge of No Return. So the Bridge of No Return is located at the Joint Security Area, which is crosses the line that North and South Korea kind of meet at. The actual line is called the Military Demarcation Line, and basically back in the day it was used as a prisoner exchange at the end of the Korean Armistice in 1953, and the name originates for the final ultimatum, basically if people wanted to go across the bridge, which they would never be able to basically come back home from, and that's where they actually got it, you know what I mean? Even if they later changed their minds, they could never come back, which is why they got the name Bridge of No Return. So up next is Nurembega. So Nurembega is also known as Nurembega. It's basically the same thing but with an O instead of a U, or vice versa, either way. But basically this thing was a legendary settlement in the northeast corner of the New England. Settlement was it was featured on a bunch of maps basically in the early 16th century up until like Europe basically colonized this region. And it was alleged that the houses in this region were they had like these giant pillars made of gold, and that the people that inhabited this place, they wore these like quartz of pearls basically all over their heads. And the word Nuremberg originally was said to be Urenberger, so it's just the O without the N. And it was said by Giovanni de Verranzo is how I think I say his name was. Basically he drew up a map in around 1529 that actually had America, and it had this settlement on it. And the word is like believed to mean quiet place between the rapids, or quiet stretch of water. There it comes from like an Algonquin language. In 1542, Jean Alphonse, he reported that he coasted south from Newfoundland and had discovered a great river, and it often appeared on subsequent European maps of North America lying south of Acadia in what is now New England basically. And the town of Bangor, Maine, so that's a couple states up basically, that's right before Canada. They used to commemorate this legend during the 19th century, naming their municipal hall Nuremberg Hall. And basically in 1886, inventor Joseph Barker Stearns built a mansion called the Nuremberg Castle, and it's located on US 1 that goes through Camden, Maine basically. So if you ever want to check that out and you're over there, go check it out. But we're moving on to the next. All right, so up next is the Miracle Staircase in Loretto Chapel. So basically deep in the southwestern United States is a city called Santa Fe, the city of Holy Faith. And basically it was here that in the 1800s 7 nuns set up a school for like small children, mainly girls. Basically it was like a little church school, and when it was time, they built a chapel named Our Lady of Light in 1873, so a little later after they started the actual school. But basically sometime around 1880, the entire order began to pray to Saint Joseph, who was the patron saint of carpenters. And basically on the 9th day of them praying, a visitor came. He showed up at the actual chapel. He showed up with a mule and some tools, and basically the first thing that the guy told these sisters was that he was a carpenter. And basically he said that he was possible to basically construct this like big staircase that led up to the second part of their actual like building, because they had tried to build one before but the carpenter never finished. So they basically just scrapped that idea until this guy had come along. And basically the only condition that he placed upon the sisters was that he would have to work in complete privacy. Like he wouldn't want anybody around him when he was working, which they thought was a little weird, but they figured, hey, whatever, this guy's about to make us a whole staircase. So, and basically when the spiral staircase was done, the sisters were delighted on how it turned out, so much so that they organized this whole big like dinner banquet kind of thing for this guy's honor basically. And when the time came, he never showed up. He disappeared. They never figured out what his name was, so they had no way of actually figuring out who this guy was to actually like thank him for it. And basically this man just kind of disappeared. But that's not like the only kind of weird thing about this staircase. So the guy is a big mystery about it, but the actual staircase itself is another complete mystery. because basically there are no central columns or support beams to this thing. It's just
like all the weight is self-supported basically by the base of this staircase. He didn't use any nails or glue. He basically used, like, if you think of like how Lincoln logs kind of are, how they just lock together, he basically used that. He just kind of like used pegs that kind of like stuck together. And basically this staircase just wraps around twice and then you get up to it. So it was just pretty weird. It had 33 steps exactly. And basically that was super important to them because apparently Jesus was 33 when he got crucified or something. I'm not religious, so I have no idea if this is actually true, but this is just what I found when I was researching. They figured that the guy who actually came and built this thing was Joseph himself, who came to their rescue, and that's why they call it St. Joseph's Staircase. So, all right, so up next is Pole of Inaccessibility. So basically a pole of inaccessibility with respect to a geographical criterion of inaccessibility marks a location that is most challenging to reach according to that criterion. Basically, the easiest way to explain this is it would be the farthest point from any land, or it would be the farthest point from whatever this criteria meets. Is that kind of making sense?
I have no idea what you just said, Giselle.
It can be defined as the center of the largest circle that can be drawn within an area of interest without encountering a coast, or where a coast is imprecisely defined, the pole will be similarly imprecise. So you could think almost like the North Pole, or like the center, the exact center of an ocean that's the furthest from any other land, if that makes sense. Basically, there's a few different poles of inaccessibility. There's actually a bunch of them, to be honest with you. There's the northern pole of inaccessibility, the southern pole of inaccessibility, the oceanic poles of inaccessibility, and the continental poles of inaccessibility. So I just basically had to break that down real quick to actually talk about the next thing on this list. So I'm gonna get to that right now. All right, so moving on from that last one, now we're on to Point Nemo. And Point Nemo is actually the oceanic pole of inaccessibility. Basically, this is the place in the ocean that is farthest from any emerged land or humans. And basically the word Nemo itself in Latin means no one, so it's appropriately named Point Nemo because there's no one. It's the furthest point away from any humans, any emerged land. So, and basically the space that it takes up is about 34 times the size of France, roughly. Basically, it's super remote and no one really ends up going out there. A lot of scientists want to end up studying out there because basically this is the place in the ocean where like marine life barely evolves. So over here is where you're gonna find like megalodons, the giant squid type of things, basically anything that's gonna be like almost prehistoric, because they're not gonna really have evolved from way back then because they're probably so deep in the water they were basically not affected. And basically the closest humans that get to Point Nemo is actually the people that are on the International Space Station when they're about 400 kilometers above the actual point itself. And it's really, this point is not really used for anything other than basically getting rid of old space debris. This is where a lot of like rocket ships and stuff will deorbit and like basically crash into the ocean. So that's pretty cool. And it's the place where the International Space Station, if it doesn't end up getting like basically reconstructed and like rebuilt or like recycled, I guess, this is the place where it's gonna end up landing in 2024. So it's pretty cool. But anyways, moving on to the next thing. I didn't have too much information on it, but pretty dope. All right, quick warning, I might mess up this whole name, but anyways, up next is the Ischigualasto Formation. Basically, this thing is a late Triassic fossiliferous formation and lager state, which is in the Ischigualasto via Union Basin, which is in basically San Juan in Argentina. Anyways, the formation dates of these places range from around the Carnation Age, which is about 231.7 and 225 MA. And basically that's all based on the actual ash bed dating that they did. And basically this formation is really important to paleontological unit and is considered a lager state as it's preserved several from early dinosaurs in this actual fossilization kind of thing from the late Triassic period. Basically a lot of coprolites and fossilized wood were found in the formation, and the formation crops out in the 1967 established Ischigualasto Provincial Park, which was designated a World Heritage Site in 2000. So let's get it. All right, so up next is the Kukaniloko Birthstones. So basically the Kukaniloko Birthstones is one of the most important ancient cultural places in Oahu, which is in Hawaii. Kukamilono or Miloko, its actual meaning is to anchor the cry from within. And basically it is the geographical pico, which is like the navel. So it's like kind of like when it goes in. It's that point of Oahu. And basically this place was symbolically the most powerful birth site in all the island's high chiefs, and basically anybody who was like super important or royalty on this island, or basically most of the islands. A lot of the islands actually have these birthstones, but there's only really 2 super important ones. Anyways, basically at this site, women give birth to the Ali, which is the royal's children, and basically surrounded was a bunch of royal witnesses. And basically at the birthstone, the children were required to learn basically like super specific traditional stuff and leadership roles from their actual ancestors in the sites and the surroundings. And basically from as early as 1100 until the mid 1600s, the father and 35 other chiefs would witness the birth of a chief at Kukaniloko. This would be announced by them playing these sacrificial drums, and basically these 36 witnesses are symbolized by the 36 stones that are actually in the complex. And the newborn chief would be taken right after the birth basically to a nearby temple for basically purification, where they would sever the umbilical cord and start reading the newborn's genealogy to them. So all right, so up next is the Lost Solomon Islands, and this one, honestly, man, it's a sad one. So basically these are the first islands that we've actually lost due to climate change. At least 5 reef islands in the remote Solomon Island region have been lost completely to rising sea levels and coastal erosion. And basically these islands range from 1 to about 5 hectares in size, and they supported dense vegetation that was over 300 years old. And basically sea level rising was the direct cause of this, but coastal erosion and everything definitely played a big role. And basically they said that when the temperature rises, obviously the ice starts to melt, and I mean, it's literally like I said, bro, it's straightforward, you know what I mean? All right, so up next is the Yanar Bulag fire spring. So basically Yanar Bulag, or the burning spring, is located in the city of Astara. Basically this thing consists of a metal standpipe inside of a small pavilion in which water comes basically like kind of pouring out. And basically it looks nothing unusual, but when you light a match and touch the water itself is set on fire. And basically this occurs due to the water's high methane content, and the locals believe that the water from the spring has remedial properties. So basically they think that this thing is like medicine and it's like has healing powers and stuff like that. And basically they would often take a drink while the flame is lit, and there are always people that are actually at the springs who are filling their bottles, and it's pretty weird, but I'm not drinking any flaming water. I don't know, that's just me though. So up next is the Gross Fredenwalde Cemetery. So basically this is a cemetery that's located in Germany, and basically it's a recent discovery in terms of archaeology, with initial excavations only taking place way back in the 60s. And basically in spite of its modern day unearthing, the cemetery is easily one of the oldest ones in all of Europe. Graves are dating back almost 8,500 years, all right? But just beyond its dating, the archaeologists are rather perplexed by the mysterious nature of the multiple graves that were uncommon back in this kind of period of time. And to that end, researchers have come across varied types of actual human remains. So pretty weird. They found a total of 9 skeletons. 4 were children. They were all below the year of 6, so they were all below 6 years old. They found 1 infant. They found a woman who was buried with an actual child that was just on her belly. And basically they found like a young man who was basically he was buried upright. So if all these people are buried like this, he's buried like this, with half of him kind of sticking out of the actual dirt itself. Basically the cemetery, its actual self, the location, it was perched about on a 300-foot high hill, and it was about 50 miles north of Berlin. And basically it didn't have it had super hard soil. So what scientists and stuff are thinking is that it would be super hard to actually dig into it to make these graves. And basically it has no water sources or anything nearby, so there's not really any evidence that a settlement would have been near here. So basically people are thinking that this is an exact spot that they picked for a cemetery, either for like sacrificial things or for some type of a religious kind of belief, some type of spiritual belief kind of thing. But they basically said that it was no accident that these people were buried like this or buried in this location. All right, so this one is kind of a short one, but basically this one is the hand in the desert, which is in Chile. And basically this thing's real name is the Mano del Desierto. And basically it's this huge structure. Basically it's a big sculpture of a hand, you know what I mean, a human hand. And it lies in the Atacama Desert, which is in Chile. And basically it was constructed by this Chilean sculptor named Mario Irizalaba. I might have fucked that up, but I think I kind of got that. I ain't gonna lie. Basically, he made this thing, and the whole reason he actually made it so big and what it was actually a human hand was basically it was meant to basically represent the awful human rights that Chileans were going through for like all the past years that they were actually, you know, an established place. And basically the big size of the hand was to emphasize human vulnerability and helplessness. So pretty dope story. I've never seen this until I actually looked it up, but it's pretty sick. I would love to see that thing one day. I wonder how tall it actually is. I don't think I actually found the exact size it was. I know that it's placed about 1,100 miles or meters above sea level, but they didn't say anything about the actual size of the sculpture itself. So, all right, second to last on this tier is the Sea People origin. So basically the Sea People were originally this confederacy of naval raiders who basically would harass and basically pillage and loot these coastal towns who were basically all around the Mediterranean region, mainly focusing on Egypt. All right, and basically they were really active during like the years 1276 to 1178 BC. And basically they were one of the major contributing factors to the Bronze Age collapsing and like basically ending. And the nationality of these people is really still unknown to this day. A lot of their records and stuff were just non-existent because people basically just said that they would come from the sea, and that was about it. You know, they didn't really have much actual records on them. A lot of them are just mainly from Egyptian sources who only describe them in terms of battle, such as the record from the stele at Tanis, which reads in part, "They came from the sea in their warships and none could stand against them." Names of the tribes who comprise of the Sea People were given basically, they called them the Sheridan, the Sheklesh, Luka, the Tersha, the Akawasha, and basically outside of Egypt they also assaulted regions in the Hittite, I think is how I say it, Hittite Empire, and basically a bunch of other Mediterranean areas. Their origin and identity has been suggested and debated to be as Etruscan or Trojan to basically Italian, Philistine, or even Minoan. Basically, there's still a ton of mystery about the Sea People. Some people think, basically, argue that if they even existed. But yeah, I think the Sea People is super interesting, to be honest with you. Anything with the sea is kind of interesting because it freaks me out. So whatever, we're moving on to the last thing though, so let's get it. All right, so finishing up the fifth tier is the Gedi Ruins. So basically the Gedi Ruins are one of Kenya's greatest mystery. They're set in the idyllic location of the Indian Ocean and buried in a deep lush forest. The town was thought to have been founded in the early 13th century, although hard evidence eludes most scientists. Basically, what has really baffled these researchers is a well-established town's mysterious abandonment and incredible development. Basically, these people had a ton of shit ready to go and just completely abandoned it.
I don't know what the fuck just happened, but I don't really care. I'ma get the fuck up out of here. This shit, I'm out.
Left standing today are numerous coal brick houses, a palace, as well as an impressive mosque. However, it is not only the quality of the ruins that amazes visitors, but the advanced nature of the settlement. Gedi was in many ways an advanced city with streets, running water, and they had flushing toilets, bro. Basically, corrupting the assumption that this whole discovery that they had flushing toilets and everything corrected the assumption that Africa was basically super far behind and didn't have any of these advancements. So pretty big discovery in terms of that. Gedi was a cosmopolitan urban setting, and archaeologists have found Ming Chinese vases, Venetian glass, as well as other artifacts from all over the world, which basically means that these people were trading with other settlements, other places around the world. They had world trade set up. So pretty crazy shit, to be honest with you, if you're thinking about it, because most people didn't even think that a lot of world trade started until the whole Silk Road thing, all back in like the Middle East and all that. So pretty crazy. And basically this is clear evidence that the Muslim inhabitants of this coastal Kenyan town traded heavily with these cultures that were outside of their own, and developed an incredible world that has now been like just basically completely overrun by these tropical forests. And since around 1948 they've been excavating this, and now it's completely protected as a national park in Kenya. So pretty dope. Honestly, the Gedi Ruins is something that's I think a lot of people should look into, because I feel like that's just such a thing that everybody thinks, is that Africa and stuff is like poor or somehow like super far behind and not as like technologically advanced as us. But this shows that way back in the 13th century that they already had flushing toilets. So hey man, that's just crazy to me. But anyways, I should have some new videos out soon. I'm gonna be breaking down like just one idea per video, so they should be a little bit shorter or whatever. But anyways, man, other than that, free the guys, make sure y'all get laid, and make sure y'all subscribe, man. That's it. So other than that, peace out. I'll catch y'all later. Stay dangerous.